Once upon a time, Hollywood had an actress known as the Silent Monument who was hypnotically gorgeous and never pursued recognition. Michelle Pfeiffer, a lady with a golden ratio face, was that woman. She used to earn pay comparable to those of A-list actors who once kissed Batman's face on screen and was fired from a movie just because she was her co-star's ex. Despite her lack of controversies, ostentatious appearances, and boisterous red carpets, she was the one who forced Hollywood to pause and pay more attention. How did the renowned Catwoman emerge from an actress who was previously written down as only having a lovely face? Why? Did Michelle decide to leave the Marvel Universe, become a single mother, and then make a triumphant comeback at the age of 60 at a time when celebrities vie for every moment of television time? And is it true that there is an unspoken fracture beneath the decades-long silence? Michelle Kidman is always on the sidelines, while her husband, producer David E. Kelley, works closely with her on high-profile TV projects. What then prevented Michelle Pfeiffer from giving up, snapping, or leaving, instead opting to remain steadfast in silence and subtly demonstrating her value, one small step at a time? Could that very stillness be the cause? Does Hollywood want to avoid discussing hiding? Keep an eye out. The following sections will introduce you to quiet falls, hidden corners, and the decisions that have made Michelle Pfeiffer one of the most enigmatic and well-respected actresses in contemporary film. Michelle Pfeiffer was born into a typical working-class household in Santa Ana, California, on April 29, 1958. Dick Pfeiffer, her father, was employed as an air conditioning technician. Donna, her mother, was a conventional housewife. Along with her older brother Rick and two younger sisters, Lori and Dee Dee, Michelle was the second of four siblings. Later, Dee Dee and Lori would each experiment with acting and modeling, but unlike their elder sister, neither pursued these careers to the finish. The Pfeiffers were of German, English, Swiss, Swedish, and Italian heritage. The family relocated to Midway City, a little town in Orange County, Southern California, when Michelle was still a young girl. Michelle became quiet as a result of growing up in this peaceful suburban area close to downtown Los Angeles, who would rather watch than talk. She had characterized herself as ordinary in school, frequently feeling excluded and unwelcome in any group, a lingering feeling of disengagement that carried her throughout maturity and, coincidentally, helped her acting. Michelle completed her education at Fountain Valley High School in 1976. She then enrolled at Golden West College with the intention of pursuing a secure and reliable professional path as a court reporter. She had never considered the arts at the moment. Her biggest ambition was to just have a stable, quiet work that was secure. Michelle worked part-time at Vons, a large Southern California grocery chain, to help pay her living expenses. Unexpectedly, the mundane cashier job, which had seemed to be just another phase of school life, became a silent turning point. Michelle started to get interested in the realm of expressions, communication, and human emotions there while working long shifts and interacting with a wide range of individuals. These aspects spoke to her far more than any topic taught in school. She then revealed that watching clients helped her build her persona, which served as the basis for the in-depth performances for which she would become famous. She competed in the Miss Orange County beauty pageant in 1978. Nobody anticipated that Michelle, a timid girl, would enter the stage with such effortless elegance. She placed in the top 6 of the Miss California pageant, in addition to winning the local round. This was more than simply a title to Michelle. It was the first door leading to an entirely other route. She entered the entertainment industry as a law student and part-time cashier, bringing with her a strong ambition to succeed and a timidity. Not only did Michelle Pfeiffer's career alter as a result of that pivotal moment, it outlined her future outlook on life. Despite not attending a prominent acting school or having any connections in the business, she always had one undeniable trait: a creative sensibility and a calm inner energy that was just waiting to be ignited. Although Michelle didn't start off as a Hollywood celebrity, her modest upbringing helped her to always remember who she was. Even after she became an A-list celebrity, Michelle Pfeiffer immediately acquired representation after becoming well known in the Miss California contest, and she started getting little TV parts. Michelle starred in a number of popular humorous television shows in the late 1970s, including Fantasy Island, Chips, Delta House, and a few more. These were shallow, short-lived jobs. However, they were sufficient for viewers to recognize a fresh, attractive face, blonde hair, brilliant eyes, and a noticeable presence. She starred with Tony Danza in the adolescent comedy The Hollywood Knights in 1980, which was her first movie appearance. Despite not being a huge hit, the movie helped Pfeiffer obtain her first significant part 2 years later. Grease 2, 1982, was anticipated to carry on the original's enormous popularity, a cultural phenomenon that had made Olivia Newton-John famous all over the world. Stephanie Zenona, a feisty, seductive, and independent leader of the Pink Ladies, was portrayed by Michelle Pfeiffer. It's ironic that Michelle didn't have any expectations for the position. She remembered that her agency took her to the audition only to get additional experience. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, actors, dancers, and singers could all hear each other's lines and songs throughout the packed casting call. Michelle wasn't even a dancer or a vocalist. She once said that she was completely embarrassed by the dancing audition, and that she had intended to discreetly go. She was shocked, however, when an assistant director came after her and informed her that director Pat Birch had requested that she come back the next day. She received an official offer for the starring part a few days later. However, Grease 2 failed when it was released, because of the high expectations created by its predecessor. Compared to the original's almost $400 million worldwide gross, it barely made roughly $15 million. The movie was a complete flop in the eyes of critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a meager 36% rating. It was referred to be a spiritless, energyless duplicate by Roger Ebert, not even a true star. Nor was Michelle Pfeiffer's performance praised. She was criticized for being shallow, superficial, and dependent only on appearances. Pfeiffer subsequently said that she too felt uneasy about the film's inflated media anticipation. She and co-star Maxwell Caulfield were the main subjects of the marketing campaign. At the time, two faces were essentially unknown. Too hot to handle was even one of the taglines. Pfeiffer just thought, "Oh God, how embarrassing," when he saw it. "What if I'm not considered attractive?" She was afraid she would destroy a cherished American franchise because of the intense pressure. Michelle had to explain on Instagram that the statements were taken out of context when they appeared in headlines years later, claiming that she detested Grease 2 and called it unbelievably bad. Conversely, she made it apparent that the film has always had a particular place in my heart and my path. She acknowledged in an Entertainment Weekly interview that the movie was a lot of fun, but it was created for a very specific demographic. She also said, "It's surprising how many fans it has, but that's great. It's possible that whatever you put out there ultimately comes full circle." In order to recall a difficult but significant beginning, Pfeiffer also disclosed that she still preserves a few items from the movie, including the Pink Lady jacket, a bowling ball, and a bowling bag. Michelle Pfeiffer was not regarded as a serious actor in the early years of her career. She was typecast in bimbo roles, which are characterized by attractive, unsophisticated, or shallow female characters that serve only as screen decoration. Inadvertently, her attractive look turned into a barrier. People wondered if there was anything genuinely significant behind her beauty, since she was so stunning. Michelle Pfeiffer had a rough start since she had no business contacts, no professional acting experience, and a pageant girl label. However, her perseverance was silently strengthened throughout that time of undervaluation. She persevered in the face of criticism, and didn't turn down minor parts. You quietly discovered how to make it in a field that seldom pardons those who are only attractive. Michelle took a few steps back after Grease 2, in order to get ready for a much longer leap forward. Scarface was the moment Michelle Pfeiffer entered the opulent room and remained there, if Grease 2 was her initial entry into Hollywood. To play Elvira Hancock, the second wife of drug lord Tony Montana, played by Al Pacino, director Brian De Palma, and screenwriter Oliver Stone sought a face that was both cold and stereotypically American in 1983. Producer Martin Bregman was drawn to Michelle Pfeiffer because of her golden hair and commanding presence. However, Brian De Palma firmly rejected her when her name was mentioned. Why? He had watched Grease 2, and like many others in the business at the time, he thought Pfeiffer was simply another shallow bankable beauty, who wasn't suited for a psychologically taxing part in a hypnotic, violent and dark movie like Scarface. Bregman, however, had a different idea. He battled for it because he thought there was unrealized potential underneath that facade. Michelle was given a screen test following many rounds of heated discussions, and that audition dispelled all preconceptions. She did more than just portray Elvira's arrogant, aloof and poisonous personality. Few expected the depth she brought to the role. Scarface caused a lot of controversy when the movie first came out because of its graphic depiction of the criminal world, violence and foul language. It made $66 million globally, $45 million of which came from North America alone, on a budget of about $25 million. Nevertheless, Scarface did not become extinct as many had assumed. Conversely, it outlived the majority of its peers. Midabul, etain endordi of its peers. Scarface now has an 81% critic and 93% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The renowned reviewer Roger Ebert rated it a perfect 4 stars and included it among the best films of all time. In the end, it was rated as one of the top 10 gangster movies of all time by the American Film Institute, or AFI, and Michelle Pfeiffer, with her thin figure, cold glare and lifeless eyes, stood out as a menacing anchor amidst that dense canvas of drugs, power and violence. Although she wasn't a boisterous figure, Elvira Hancock represented the sinister side of fame as a lady enamored with the very society she had once considered dazzling. Not only did Michelle Pfeiffer leave a lasting impression on viewers, she forced Hollywood to reconsider. She became one of the most promising faces of a new age, no longer the blonde bimbo from Grease 2. Michelle Pfeiffer did not instantly become a star after Scarface. However, one thing was for sure: on film, she wasn't a pretty flower. Pfeiffer took the more difficult route rather than pursuing love leads or the traditional box office beauty parts that Hollywood freely distributed. She aspired to establish herself as a legitimate actor rather than a passing celebrity. She co-starred with Susan Sarandon and Jack Nicholson in the 1987 film The Witches of Eastwick. The production was everything from light. Despite the film's funny supernatural tone, the producer was known for his volatile demeanor, and director George Miller left the set twice. In the midst of the turmoil, Pfeiffer and her female co-stars managed to maintain emotional equilibrium by getting together frequently in Jack Nicholson's trailer, having lunch and chatting like true friends. Their camaraderie and unity enabled them to weather a stormy set, and Pfeiffer exuded a shrewd, carefree appeal on film, seemingly destined to portray the delicately nuanced contemporary woman. However, the following year, in Married to the Mob, 1988, she had her first significant breakthrough as Angela DeMarco, a mafia widow attempting to flee the criminal underground. For the first time, Pfeiffer handled a movie by herself, without the help of a well-known male celebrity. Pfeiffer subsequently claimed that the polite, innovative atmosphere that director Jonathan Demme fostered enabled her to overcome her own professional concerns. She earned her first Golden Globe nod by transforming Angela into a likable, feisty figure with unexpected depth, complete with untidy hair, a heavy Brooklyn accent, and eyes that yearned for freedom. With the same year, she dabbled with Risky Liaisons, a whole new area. Amidst the cunning and passion-fueled French nobility of the 18th century, Pfeiffer played Madame de Tourvel, a morally upright woman entangled in a vicious game of seduction and treachery. The part required surgical accuracy because of the historical clothes, formal language, and complex conversation. Pfeiffer, however, refused to back down. She created a character full of suffering and vulnerability without ever sacrificing dignity, even in the company of acting titans like Glenn Close and John Malkovich. She was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress and won a BAFTA for the performance. Is widely recognized as one of her most subtle changes. Then followed 1989's The Fabulous Baker Boys, in which Michelle Pfeiffer was viewed as the film's distinguishing character rather than as a talented actress. She portrayed Susie Diamond, a former escort and lounge singer who shows up in the lives of two failing musicians. Real singing, subtle acting, and the ability to dominate a space with sheer presence, qualities that few actresses possess, were required for the part. In order to prepare, Pfeiffer studied jazz greats like Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday for months. The outcome? She made movie history by performing Macon Whoopee while lying on top of a grand piano, just a woman singing in a single take, and yet it spoke at everything: sensuality, longing, loneliness, and a persistent melancholy. Her visage was compared by several commentators to Marilyn Monroe in Some Like It Hot, Irreplaceable Icons, and Rita Hayworth in Gilda. Pfeiffer's portrayal as Susie Diamond earned her the Golden Globe for Best Actress and her first nomination for Best Actress at the Academy Awards. There were no further questions. Her modest perseverance and unadulterated brilliance had brought her to the top. As the 1990s rolled around, Michelle Pfeiffer was no longer attempting to establish her skills. That was what she had done. Hollywood was now prepared to spend a lot of money to retain her. Pfeiffer co-starred with Sean Connery in The Russia House in 1990 as Katya Orlova, a Russian editor. Following the end of the Cold War, and in preparation for the part, it was the first American film to be filmed in the Soviet Union. Michelle put a lot of effort into studying Russian and honing her accent. She was able to imitate like a mockingbird, according to director Fred Shepisi, and she was constantly proactive in looking for help to improve her performance. That astute intuition gave Katya genuine dimension and led to Pfeiffer receiving yet another Golden Globe nomination, beginning 6 years of award accolades. Michelle got back together with Al Pacino, Frankie, and Johnny in 1991. Kathy Bates had performed the part of Frankie on stage, and she was excited to play it again in the movie. However, Pfeiffer was selected by the filmmakers, a choice that caused controversy since some people thought she was too attractive to play a lonely, reclusive waitress. However, Michelle hushed any skepticism with a heartbreakingly sweet performance. She transformed Frankie into a weak yet subtly powerful woman, and she was nominated for another Golden Globe without any argument. Then came the crucial year of 1992. Pfeiffer took on two very different parts at the same time, and each of them challenged her to reach new heights. She played Lorraine Hallett in Lovefield, a white Southern woman with a traditional exterior that belied a desire for change. After President Kennedy was assassinated, she went on a voyage with a black guy and his daughter, which made her face the truth about her life. Although Orion Pictures' bankruptcy caused the picture to be delayed, her performance was well received by both reviewers and viewers when it was released. Pfeiffer got her third Academy Award nomination for Best Actress after winning the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival. She practiced with a whip that year, put on the black latex outfit, and became Batman Returns Catwoman. Annette Bening was supposed to play the part, but she stepped down because she was pregnant. Despite having only a few weeks to be ready, Pfeiffer's dedication astounded everyone. Catwoman was prone to fainting and could only wear the vacuum-sealed costume for brief periods of time. She unintentionally hit her whip teacher during training, but he persisted until she became proficient. Despite just lasting a few seconds, her famous moment of licking Batman's face came to represent power and sex in movies. She was dubbed the greatest Catwoman of all time by Premiere magazine, and viewers were unable to turn away, a ferocious, tortured, and terrible beast. In Dangerous Minds 1995, 3 years later, Michelle physically returned to Earth. She portrayed Lou Ann Johnson, an inner-city schoolteacher who had served in the Marines. One of the most potent representations of a teacher in popular culture was produced by her narrative and her disobedient students against the background of Gangsta's Paradise. During filming, few were aware of her pregnancy. She employed big sweaters, well-chosen camera angles, and eye-distracting objects to conceal her tummy. The final version did not include a subplot about a romance with a male instructor played by Andy Garcia to uphold the movie's main theme of change and education. Michelle Pfeiffer soon became a member of the exclusive $12 Million Club, which pays females incomes comparable to those of A-list male celebrities. She was one of the first 3 women to reach that milestone in the late 1990s, joining Jodie Foster and Meg Ryan. It was not just a personal achievement, but also a sign of a change in the balance of power in Hollywood. What's remarkable is that Pfeiffer wasn't your average box office draw or action star. She opted for creative and psychological positions, which are typically underappreciated in the marketplace. Her emotional depth and professional repute, however, made Hollywood acknowledge the worth of genuine talent. The obvious evidence was her $12 million salary for The Deep End of the Ocean 1999. She didn't have to follow fashion, she ascended to the top on her own terms after months. Do you believe it's just good timing or absolute class when an actress who is known for her art flicks makes as much as an action star? A Broken Wife, The Story of Us, A Haunted Woman, What Lies Beneath, A Defiant Lawyer, I Am Sam, An Overbearing Mother, and White Oleander were just a few of the roles that Michelle Pfeiffer played as she transitioned into the new millennium and ended the 1990s with The Deep End of the Ocean. Pfeiffer demonstrated that endurance and constant reinvention, rather than box office success, are what truly define an artist. And if one were to pinpoint a turning point in her heyday, it would be the point at which she was referred to as a formidable artist rather than a stunning actress. Peaks, however, are temporary. Michelle Pfeiffer started voluntarily stepping away from significant projects after 2002. She shut down Via Rosa Productions. Her production firm rejected a lot of huge projects and devoted herself entirely to her family, particularly as her 2 kids were approaching puberty. During this time, Pfeiffer hardly appeared on red carpets, and only infrequently took parts in lesser limited-release movies like Personal Effects and I Could Never Be Your Woman. She then made a remarkable comeback in 2007, not in art pictures or romantic leads, but in 2 unexpectedly antagonistic parts. Lamia in Stardust and Velma von Tussle in Hairspray. One was a dominating, ambitious and racist lady. The other is an old witch who wants to regain her youth by searching for a fallen star's heart. Both personalities were presented by Pfeiffer with a captivating clarity that made it difficult to look away, despite their apparent lack of connection. Despite having a $75 million budget, Hairspray made $203.5 million worldwide. It received remarkable ratings for a musical adaptation, scoring 92% on Rotten Tomatoes and 81% on Metacritic. Pfeiffer was described by critics as magnificent, graceful, one-of-a-kind and irreplaceable. In the meanwhile, Stardust garnered favorable reviews with a 77% Rotten Tomatoes score, despite not being a box office giant, with $137 million worldwide on a budget of about $70, $88.5 million. Once more, Pfeiffer was the film's most notable star, lending Lamia not just a sense of dread but also emotional nuance and lethal charm. In summary, these 2 performances served as a reminder to Hollywood that beauty may wane and also signaled Michelle Pfeiffer's return after years of seclusion. However, acting skill doesn't. Furthermore, Pfeiffer's contribution on the screen never really fades out. There was another Michelle Pfeiffer behind the lucrative parts, the multi-million-dollar movies, and the limelight. Quiet, taciturn, and committed to preventing the media from accessing her personal life. A loving affair between 2 young artists pursuing their passions was the beginning of her first marriage. Michelle Pfeiffer married actor-director Peter Horton in 1981 when she was just 22 years old. Horton would go on to become well known for his part in the television series 30-something. Both on and off screen, they soon became a relationship after meeting in a Los Angeles acting class. They starred together in films like One Too Many 1985 and Amazon Women on the Moon 1987. However, their friendship didn't endure. In an interview with Interview magazine in 2012, Michelle candidly reminisced about that marriage. We never ceased caring for one another, thus it was difficult for us both. We didn't split up in a spectacular or furious way. He even assisted me in loading my belongings into the vehicle. No resentment. Additionally, we spoke on the phone each day. That first marriage served as a lesson for Pfeiffer. It's one thing to love someone. Growing up together is a completely different experience. She also realized that juggling a career and a personal life would never be simple as Hollywood's limelight became brighter and more invasive. It was one of the infrequent splits in Hollywood, just 2 adults, courteous enough to go with dignity, and no public weeping. Michelle started dating actor and producer Fisher Stevens after splitting from Peter Horton. They first crossed paths in 1989 while attending a New York Shakespeare production. Fisher portrayed Sir Andrew Agchick, while Michelle portrayed Olivia. What started off as a business partnership swiftly developed into a private romance. Gentle, discreet and very much in Pfeiffer's way, the romance lasted 3 years. No power couple status, no red carpets. They had simple lives away from the spotlight, and backstage pieces sometimes mention them. Once more, however, they decided to part ways without causing harm to one another as their paths diverged. She started considering having kids after that connection without waiting for someone else. In one interview, she said, "I had considered finding a man just to be the father, no strings, no marriage. Then she decided what to do. She may be content as a single mother." That choice marked a sea change in more than just her personal life. The proclamation was made quietly. Michelle Pfeiffer started what she really desired without waiting for anyone else to do it. And autonomous, much like her role-choosing methodology. Unpredictable and unconventional, she entered single parenting with confidence and self-belief. She made the significant and wholly independent choice to adopt a child in early 1993. Michelle only wanted to become a mother, without getting into the complexities of marriage or love. A mutual acquaintance set up a blind date at that time. Instead of going to a posh restaurant or buying pricey champagne, they went bowling. David E. Kelley, an Emmy-winning producer and screenwriter, was the guy that night. Michelle first even considered introducing him to Diddy, her sister. "Don't you dare," the buddy exclaimed, stopping her and looking her in the eye. "On the other side of me is your future spouse." That was the start of their romance. Unexpected, straightforward, and quite different from the Hollywood model. The kid arrived 2 months after that first date, when Michelle was still in the process of adopting Claudia Rose. She further said, "Most couples don't go through that, and we had a child almost immediately. But as a result, I was able to witness David in a setting that would undoubtedly set the boys apart from the men. He made no hesitation, he stood up to it." On November 13, 1993, 10 months after their first date, they were married. David became Claudia's legal father on the same day she was christened. John Henry Kelley, their biological son, was born over a year later. However, their subsequent lives are what really stand out, not the order of events. Michelle acknowledged that, "We never attempted to make our marriage into a performative one, and that I was very confident in my decision. Perhaps this is the reason no one ever writes about us. I am appreciative of that. We're undoubtedly considered dull by others. Perhaps we are, though. It was not fame that they safeguarded. Family was involved." Michelle and David fiercely resisted periodicals that attempted to differentiate between biological and adopted children, avoided making frequent appearances in the media, and refused to allow their children to be photographed without their permission. She answered, "We love them both equally. And when someone tries to do something different, it's frustrating." Raised together before their relationship was even 3 months old, Claudia Rose was a shy but remarkable child. Acting was not her career path. Rather, she pursued studies in Slavic languages and literatures, graduating from Princeton with a Bachelor of Arts in 2015, Columbia with a Master of Arts in 2019, and Columbia with a Master of Philosophy in 2021, where she went on to become a lecturer. With the exception of one time when Michelle shared a picture of them on Instagram with the remark, "Hanging with my girlfriend," Claudia seldom appears with her mother and doesn't use public social media. Fans were captivated by the moment because everyone realized that was the type of love that doesn't require validation. They have adhered to the same guideline for almost 30 years, never collaborate. "I've seen happily married couples collaborate on a single movie," Michelle once said. And by next year they're filing for divorce. Michelle is a well-known actress and David is a well-known writer, but they have never worked together on a project. With calm, unflinching professional respect, each allows the other room. Additionally, Saturday nights are always set out for one another, regardless of how busy their schedules are. They made the agreement when Claudia was still a young girl. One weekend date, one movie, and one meal that has lasted for 29 years. "We were sleep-deprived from the baby, but we still rushed out for date night," Michelle laughed. She thinks that luck exists. "I made a great choice in David. I am quite fortunate. My hubby is the most honest person I've ever met. He is intelligent, humorous, and really kind. The fact that I respect him, however, is what matters most. You will become tired of your lover if you don't appreciate them." A scandal is not necessary for every Hollywood romance to be noteworthy. Sometimes the tranquility of a relationship which is genuinely uncommon, is what makes it memorable. But not all the dark corners of Michelle Pfeiffer's private life were quiet. Michelle was given consideration for the lead female part of Vicky Vale in 1989, when Warner Brothers was casting for the popular Batman movie. This was a significant chance at the time, however behind the scenes, things weren't as easy as they appeared. Bruce Wayne actor Michael Keaton vehemently objected to being partnered with Michelle. Why? The two had been dating for a while before splitting up. Actor Robert Wuhl, who portrayed journalist Alexander Knox, claimed that Keaton was adamantly against Pfeiffer playing the major part, since he was still working on making up with his ex-wife at the time. According to reports, Keaton and producer John Peters got into a fight on site. Michelle Pfeiffer was vetoed from the casting stage, and Kim Basinger ultimately won the part. That looked to be the conclusion of the narrative. However, Michelle returned 3 years later, this time as Catwoman, one of the most alluring and audacious characters of the 1990s, in Batman Returns, in addition to co-starring alongside Keaton. Ironically, after being rejected because she was once in love, the lady reappeared to lick Batman's face on the big screen. For Michelle, it was just another aspect of her profession, but many viewers believed that Hollywood operated in peculiar ways. Later, Michael Keaton remarked, "Be professional, be grown up," in response to a question about what guidance he would give a young actor working with an ex. After almost 30 years, Michelle's name reappeared. Not due to a co-star, but rather to a different name that is strongly associated with her spouse, Nicole Kidman. When the psychological thriller The Undoing, starring Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, became a worldwide phenomenon in 2020, media attention swiftly shifted to Michelle Pfeiffer, the woman behind the scenes. The sitcom was created by her husband, David E. Kelley, a well-known writer and producer, and Nicole Kidman, not Michelle, was chosen to play the lead role. Michelle wasn't quite at ease with David and Nicole working so closely together, phoning often and devoting hours to discussing the screenplay, according to a source cited by New Idea. According to The Insider, Michelle started to feel like the third wheel in her own marriage because David phoned her so frequently. To remind him who should come first, she had to establish some ground rules. When it became apparent that Michelle had not even been given consideration for a position in the production, speculation grew. It was difficult for some critics to believe. According to one source, she may not have won an Oscar, but her abilities are unmatched. Michelle, on the other hand, never made public remarks. As she usually had in the cacophonous realm of entertainment, she said nothing. However, the people continued to raise questions despite the quiet. Was there a fracture that was invisible? Michelle never reacted when two strong, attractive women, both navigating midlife in a field that is unforgiving to aging actresses, were subtly compared by the guy they both worked with most frequently, and maybe that's why people are so interested in it. Would you be able to maintain your composure while witnessing your spouse work closely with another Hollywood legend, like Michelle Pfeiffer did? Tell us in the comments section. Because this is more than simply a tale about a star. Loudness has never been Michelle Pfeiffer's style. Throughout her nearly 50 years in the workforce, she has never crafted an image on social media, or relied on controversy to be relevant. She is one of the most distinctive characters in Hollywood, nonetheless, because of her modest demeanor. She was selected as the first ever cover star for People magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People in the World edition in 1990. She would make 6 appearances on that list during the following 10 years, more than most of her peers. She was also listed as having one of the most structurally flawless features by traditional aesthetic criteria in an independent research on golden ratio facial proportions. Pfeiffer, however, never relied on her attractiveness. She gained notoriety for being extremely thorough in her preparation for each scene, continuously honing her skill, and most importantly, never viewing her own performances. She believed that acting was something that should be done entirely on set rather than something that should be thought about or analyzed afterwards. In the profession, she is frequently seen as a character actor who is drawn to challenging, nuanced parts, but is conversely constrained by her remarkable looks. She was an outlier because of that paradox. A serious actress who received 3 Oscar nominations without ever following commercial formulae, she is also a sex icon. The name Michelle Pfeiffer has even appeared in unexpected pop cultural contexts. She was mentioned by name in Riptide and Uptown Funk in 2014. In cricket, is used. In a brilliant homage to her name, Michelle is used in jest if a bowler takes 5 wickets while playing off 5 for. It's evidence that her impact goes much beyond cinema, reaching unanticipated cultural nooks and crannies. She is not the most readily branded celebrity and hasn't won many significant honors. However, Michelle Pfeiffer has made a lasting and indispensable mark on the annals of contemporary filmmaking. Michelle Pfeiffer is not surviving on her former fame at the age of 66. She made a spectacular return in 2017 with a series of performances that reviewers couldn't ignore, following years of selected assignments and a low-key lifestyle. The lady who lost her dignity in Where is Kira, Ruth Madoff in The Wizard of Lies, for which she received nods for both the Emmy and the Golden Globe, and her notable performances in Mother Murder on the Orient Express and French Exit, the latter of which won her 8th Golden Globe nomination. With her roles as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, in Ant-Man and the Wasp 2018 and Quantumania 2023, Michelle made her formal debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU), demonstrating her continuing appeal to audiences of all ages. Pfeiffer leads a very contemplative life away from the screen. She has painted in oil all of her life. Painting is more than simply a pastime, it's a profound and peaceful form of therapy. It was formerly referred to by Pfeiffer as a type of meditation, a location where she is not required to accomplish anything. All that's left are hues and feelings. However, painting is not the end of her creative life. Michelle was also a trailblazer when she entered the corporate world. She introduced the clean fragrance line Henry Rose in 2019, making it the first in the world to get dual certification from Cradle to Cradle and the Environmental Working Group, ensuring the utmost sustainability and health requirements. There is more to Henry Rose than just a product. Like her nearly half-century in Hollywood, it is a personal declaration that is open, secure, sophisticated, and moral. As 2024 and 2025 progress, Michelle Pfeiffer is not only making a comeback, she is changing. She has agreed to co-produce and appear in the Madison, Taylor Sheridan's next chapter in the Yellowstone world. A new phase of the project has begun. Michelle isn't acting anymore. What she is a part of is being artistically shaped by her. Concurrently, she plays Cheyenne Millette in the forthcoming series Margot's Got Money Troubles on Apple TV+, co-starring with Elle Fanning and Nicole Kidman in her first-ever partnership with her husband, David E. Kelley. Michelle also makes an appearance in A Christmas Comedy from Amazon MGM, in 2024. What a funny, unexpected and heartwarming job it is to play Claire Clouster, a mother who disappears shortly before Christmas. She then returns to the forefront in the summer of 2025, as the face of Saint Laurent, starring in a campaign that Anthony Vaccarello artistically designed. Michelle Pfeiffer has made the decision to follow her own path among the unrelenting tide of Hollywood. Quiet, unassuming, yet never outdated. "I don't understand why the media doesn't write more about us," she once remarked. "Perhaps because we're uninteresting. And to be honest, I'm thankful for it." Michelle Pfeiffer never wanted attention. However, she made her mark on film history with her skill, fortitude, and a modestly contented personal life. Her path demonstrates one truth: she went from underappreciated positions to the eternal Catwoman, from a quiet mother to a trailblazing businesswoman. To become a legend, you don't have to make noise. Pfeiffer is a living example of brilliance, self-possession, and timeless beauty. She has managed to hold on to one thing in a Hollywood that is always changing: honesty. In Michelle Pfeiffer's nearly 50-year career, which period most struck you? To spread a star's inspiration, share this video and leave a comment. That never goes away. To ensure you don't miss the upcoming articles, remember to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. We have a lot more amazing tales in store for you.